Hello, my dear viewers of The Pioneer. How are you doing? Like always, I hope you're healthy and well. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring the developments on the Russia-Ukraine war to your screens. We have also covered this issue in our map reports. The offensive operations launched by the Russian armed forces have largely failed. All reports confirms this. The failure here is related to the inability of the Russian army to reach any targets when it's launched the attacks. Russian sources also share many reports in this regard. Of course, the failure of the Russian army on the front line has led to a new attrition of the Russian soldiers. According to the reports from Ukrainian sources, there has been an increase in the number of Russian soldiers surrendering to the recent days. It is reported that the tendency of the Russian soldiers, especially around Avdiivka, to surrender has increased. In addition, some units of the Russian army are now refusing to fight. So, what are the developments regarding the surrendered Russian soldiers? Let's take a look at the developments together. As the Pioneer team, we continue to carry the Russia-Ukraine war to your screens. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all your comments on our videos. Please continue to express your opinions about our content in the comments. Let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. Meat attacks. We often bring it up. Units of the Russian armed forces have been using this strategy for a long time, especially on the Donetsk front line. So far, however, they have not yet been able to achieve any large-scale gains. The meat attacks are carried out by the Russian troops in the dense crowds, with inadequate equipment and without artillery support. Of course, this is an important reason for the increase in the losses in the Russian army. Inadequate artillery support and the Russian army's attacks with inadequate equipment increases the losses. These losses have increased in the Russian army in recent days. In addition, the severe cold weather on the front line is one of the situations that worsen the situation of the Russian soldiers. Under these conditions, surrender is the easiest salvation for the Russian soldiers. According to the reports, Russian soldiers whose front-line conditions have worsened in recent days have started to surrender to the Ukrainian army. According to reports from Ukrainian sources, surrendered Russian soldiers are usually seen around Avdiivka. The most important statement on the subject came from Ukrainian General Alexander Syrsky. Syrsky, the commander of the Ukrainian ground forces, uses the following statements while publishing a report on the increase in the number of surrendered Russian soldiers. The prisoners, named Sergeant Sergei Saranchin, was abandoned without food, shelter, and water, and have been sent to the battlefield. He surrendered to us with the rest of his units. He believes it's better to go to jail and reap than to go to the war. I strongly advise Russians not to enter Ukraine because Russians don't live long in war. I would like to ask Putin why he has exterminated so many Russians. As can be seen from Syrsky's statements, there are now more high-ranking soldiers among the surrendered Russian soldiers. There is also another remarkable detail in Syrsky's statements. Russian soldiers are left alone directly by the Russian army. Russian soldiers are not given food and drink. The problems of the Russian soldiers, who are already facing difficult conditions, are getting worse. Another statement on the subject came from Tavria Colonel Alexander Shtopun. According to the Shtopun's statements, the Tavria group recently captured a Russian detachment. Alexander Shtopun made the following statements on the subject. A Russian military detachment of the 40 Russian soldiers was fleeing from the front line. They abandoned their trenches. Do you know what they were running away from? From their own friends. Because the Russian army had informed these soldiers that they would be executed if they fled. Their goal was to escape to the Crimean Peninsula, but our troops caught them trying to escape. The Russian soldiers didn't give us any troubles because it was better for them to fall into our hands than into the hands of the Russian army. Almost all of this surrender took place on the Donetsk front line. So this is the information conveyed by us, by the reports. However, the situation on the frontline areas is becoming more critical for the Russian army every day. As we have shared with you in our previous reports, the Russian army has increased the use of the foreign soldiers to compensate for its losses. Somali soldiers are also frequently seen on the front line in recent days. Allegedly, about 10 Russian army personnel surrendered recently in the Robotyn sector of the Zaporizhia front line. These surrendered Russian soldiers were Somali. Images of surrendered Somali mercenaries were published on social media. According to the Somali soldiers' claims, they were recruited about 2 months ago. The Russian army had promised them a certain amount of payment. However, these payments were not provided for 2 months. According to the claims of Somali soldiers who surrendered, there are many personnel serving in the Russian army who want to surrender to the Ukrainian army. It is also claimed by Somali soldiers that these personnel are just waiting for the appropriate time. We often talk about the aggravation of the Russian conditions in the front line. Due to the aggravation of this situation, we may see more Russian armed forces personnel surrender in the coming days. Of course, there are not only casualties in the Russian army. At the same time, wounded Russian soldiers have become a big problem. As a result of the successful operations carried out by the Ukrainian defense during the meat attacks, many Russian soldiers were wounded. The Russian military health system can no longer keep up with these soldiers. Health intervention has become quite difficult. Again, some Russian soldiers recently made a remarkable confession on the subject. The confession in question as follows. They are transporting the wounded in a container designed to carry fish. There are 20 people here. People are locked in here 2 by 2 for a month. They bring the wounded from hospitals and torture them into the basements. They're not allowed to go to the toilet. They're not given food and drink. Our comrades are locked in containers. They're about to lose their lives from hunger. We are in Bakhmut. The situation is very bad. The situation in Storm's battalions is critical. The struggle cannot be continued here under these conditions. Another noteworthy issue is related to the Chechen troops. According to reports, the pro-Russian Chechen brigade is now refusing to fight. The Chechen soldier who made a statement with a video makes the following statements on the subject. Those who are with us are afraid to go out. Half of the brigade will not go out to fight. They are refusing, they are not doing anything. This is a place where one can go crazy. We sit in the little holes in the ground, wet, no food. There are booby-trapped drones overhead, kamikaze drones. Others are throwing grenades. The bombardments doesn't stop for a moment. Returning home alive is a big problem. We don't know how to do it. Now tell me, what do you think? Do you think the number of surrendering Russian soldiers will increase? What do you think about the confession of surrendered Russian soldiers? How will the increasing difficulties on the front line affect the Russian army? Will the number of deserters from the Russian army increase? What do you think about the refusal of Chechen soldiers to fight? Let me know in the comments. You know that I care a lot and read about your... Let me know in the comments. You know that I read and care a lot about your comments.